So you believe Blake Lively wrestled control of the film?
I think she tried to, yes.
Did she succeed in the end?
Probably, yeah.
The courtroom was supposed to be quiet, controlled, and predictable. Just another day in a legal battle that had already been dragging on behind closed doors for months. But what actually unfolded reportedly left everyone inside that room frozen.
I think that there was a massive compromise in terms of Justin's original vision for the film.
Because when the key witness finally stepped forward, the entire atmosphere shifted in a way no one was prepared for. Suddenly, this case involving Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni stopped feeling like a standard Hollywood dispute and started feeling like something far more personal, far more intense, and far more explosive than anyone outside the room could have imagined. According to courtroom insiders and early leaks spreading online, the tension reached its peak when a key witness, believed to be closely connected to the production environment.
I think in film, everybody's always vying for power and control. I think that this is probably the most intense situation I've ever been in film.
Took the stand, and from the very first sentence, the energy in the room changed completely. Blake Lively, known for her calm public image and controlled presence, was reportedly seen sitting very still, not reacting, not shifting, just staring forward with a focus that observers described as unsettlingly composed. But insiders suggest it wasn't calmness at all.
In my opinion, I find it very hard to believe the allegations against him. And considering his mission statement about the film and him genuinely pitching that he was doing this film to help young women, I just find it hard to believe the allegations, to be honest.
It felt more like anticipation, maybe even concern, because what this witness allegedly began to describe wasn't just about production disagreements or creative differences, but a chain of behind-the-scenes interactions that painted a very different picture from what the public had been led to believe. That's when the whispers reportedly started spreading through the courtroom audience, with one journalist outside later being heard saying,
Maybe Blake smelled his kindness, mistook it for weakness, and tried to take advantage and take power, so yeah.
This is not going how anyone expected. Not even close. To understand why this moment hit so hard, you have to go back to when Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni were not courtroom headlines but collaborators, working together on a project that, on the surface, looked like a perfect creative alignment. During the early stages of It Ends With Us, everything was presented as professional synergy, two respected names in Hollywood working toward a shared emotional vision. But behind that polished image, rumors slowly began to surface about creative disagreements, tone clashes, and growing tension in direction. At first, fans dismissed it as normal Hollywood friction, something that happens on almost every major production. But then came something far more noticeable: silence.
In response to Blake Lively's claims that she was nearly nude, he alleges her costume included a full hospital gown, black shorts, and torso-covering prosthetic to make her appear pregnant in addition to whatever personal garments she chose.
No joint appearances, no unified promotional energy, and no clear explanation for the growing distance between them. In Hollywood, silence is never truly empty. It usually means something is being carefully contained or strategically prepared. And as time passed, that silence began to feel heavier, like a story unfolding off camera that the public could sense but not yet see. Then came the first real signs of what people are now calling betrayal.
Told Page 6, I'm not going to speculate as to Miss Lively's motivations for mentioning me in the complaint. Needless to say, my experience working with her is very different than the one she described in her lawsuit.
Or at least something close to it. When the witness testimony reportedly introduced details that no one in the room expected to hear. There were mentions of conflicting accounts, disagreements over what actually happened during key production moments, and subtle suggestions that decisions were being made behind closed doors without full mutual agreement. But what truly shifted the energy in the courtroom wasn't just the content of the testimony. It was the reaction it triggered. Blake Lively was reportedly seen quietly speaking with her legal team, her expression tightening as each new detail emerged, while Justin Baldoni remained outwardly composed but noticeably changed in demeanor, as if every word was landing heavier than the last. Observers described it as a shift from calm control to quiet calculation, like someone carefully listening for the moment the narrative might turn. And then came the detail that sparked chaos online. A claim suggesting there were private conversations that painted a very different version of events than what had been publicly assumed. That single suggestion was enough to change the tone of everything in the room, turning it from tense to electric in seconds. Outside the courthouse,
the mountains of evidence that she has, to me, so far, only shows the lengths that her and Ryan were willing to go to completely destroy Wayfair and take over their movie.
The internet did what it always does, reacted instantly and violently. Hashtags like hashtag Blake Lively, hashtag Justin Baldoni, and hashtag courtroom drama began trending within minutes, and the audience split almost immediately into opposing sides. Some insisted Blake was being unfairly pulled into a distorted narrative.
If you thought that was enough drama, check this out. TV and Movie Addict is reporting that more will be unsealed. The judge said he will unseal a lot of things.
While others believed Justin Baldoni was finally being vindicated after months of speculation and silence. One fan commented online, "Something big just shifted, and I don't think people realize it yet," while another wrote, "This feels like the beginning of a total reversal." And as the noise grew louder online, the courtroom itself remained trapped in a silence that felt even heavier than the accusations being spoken aloud, because what no one could yet answer was simple, but devastating. If this witness testimony was only the beginning, then what else was still waiting to come out, and who would it ultimately destroy first? The tension didn't fade after the witness stepped down. In fact, it got worse. According to people present inside the courthouse, the moment the testimony paused, the silence that followed felt almost unnatural, like the room was holding its breath and nobody knew who would break first. Blake Lively was reportedly seen leaning slightly toward her legal team again, this time more urgently, her expression no longer neutral but visibly tightened, as if every new detail had added weight she didn't expect. Justin Baldoni, meanwhile, stayed still, but observers noted something subtle had changed in his posture. Less ease, more restraint, like someone carefully controlling their reactions while processing something far more serious than what had been publicly discussed. And that's when the rumors outside started to explode. Because within minutes of the courtroom break, fragments of what was allegedly said began leaking online through social media accounts, anonymous posts, and entertainment insiders who claimed they were getting calls from people inside the building. Nothing was fully confirmed, but that didn't matter anymore. The internet had already decided this was the moment the case had escalated. Some of the leaked claims suggested there were disagreements about creative control that went far beyond typical production issues. Others hinted at communication breakdowns that allegedly created tension behind the scenes for weeks, even months, before the public ever noticed anything unusual. And then came the most explosive part: suggestions that certain decisions during production may not have been fully transparent between both sides, leading to conflicting narratives that are now being dragged into a legal spotlight. The moment these details started circulating, fan communities went into full meltdown. On one side, supporters of Blake Lively pushed back hard, arguing that the narrative being spread online was distorted, exaggerated, and being twisted for drama. "This is clearly being taken out of context," one fan wrote. "People are jumping to conclusions without facts." But on the other side, skepticism was growing fast. Some viewers believed the pattern of silence, delayed responses, and shifting public perceptions pointed to something deeper unfolding behind the scenes. "Too many inconsistencies," another comment read. "Something doesn't add up, and now it's finally coming out." And that's when the situation took a darker turn, because speculation started turning into accusation. Not official, not verified, but loud enough to dominate the conversation. Entertainment bloggers began breaking down timelines. Social media users started comparing past interviews, public appearances, and old promotional clips, searching for hidden tension in every smile, every pause, every glance. Suddenly, nothing felt casual anymore. Every interaction between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni was being reanalyzed like evidence in a case that had already been decided by the internet. And the pressure wasn't just online. Inside the courtroom, according to early reports, the legal teams were seen in intense discussion during the break, with documents being reviewed rapidly and quiet exchanges happening that suggested the testimony had shifted the direction of the argument more than expected. One observer described the atmosphere as controlled chaos, where everyone understood something significant had just happened, but nobody could agree yet on what it meant. Then came the moment that reignited everything. A second witness, reportedly connected indirectly to production communications, was mentioned as potentially being called next. That single possibility was enough to change the energy again. Because if one testimony had already caused this level of reaction, the idea of another one, possibly with different information or perspective, immediately raised the stakes even higher. Online, the reaction was instant. Wait, there's more witnesses coming? This is about to get worse. If this is part 1, what is part 2 going to look like? And the divide between fans only deepened. Some insisted this was turning into a coordinated narrative attack, arguing that selective leaks were shaping public opinion unfairly. Others believed the opposite, that what was unfolding was a slow unraveling of truths that had been hidden for too long. Meanwhile, Blake Lively's supporters pointed to her history of professionalism and control in public settings, saying she would not be involved in anything questionable without clear context. Justin Baldoni's supporters, however, argued that the growing inconsistencies and rising tension suggested he was being misunderstood or misrepresented in the early narrative that formed online. But despite all the arguments, one thing became impossible to ignore. The story was no longer about rumors. It was now about consequences. And as the courtroom prepared to continue, with everyone aware that more testimony could be coming at any moment, one question began spreading across social media like wildfire. If this is only the middle of the case, then what exactly is waiting in the next testimony that both sides seem so nervous to face? When the courtroom session resumed, the atmosphere felt even heavier than before, like everyone inside had quietly accepted that whatever came next would not be easy to undo. Blake Lively reportedly returned with the same controlled expression, but observers noted a subtle shift. Less composure, more guarded awareness, as if she already knew the tone of the case had changed permanently. Justin Baldoni also re-entered with a steady posture. Yet those watching closely described a kind of quiet intensity in him, the kind that suggests someone is preparing for a turning point rather than just another legal exchange. And then, almost immediately, the direction of the entire case shifted again when the prosecution introduced additional context tied to earlier testimony, pushing the narrative into areas that had never been publicly discussed before. The witness statements were not just being repeated, they were being expanded, layered with new details that painted a more complicated picture of behind-the-scenes communication, timing, and decision-making that allegedly didn't align with what fans had believed up to this point. As each point was raised, the energy in the room reportedly became more strained, with moments of silence stretching longer than usual, as if even the lawyers were carefully measuring every word before responding. Blake's team was seen exchanging quick notes, occasionally leaning in closer, while her expression tightened briefly at certain mentions, especially when references were made to private conversations and internal discussions that had never surfaced publicly. Across the room, Justin Baldoni remained outwardly composed, but those present noted a sharper focus in his attention, as if he was tracking every detail with increasing seriousness rather than surprise. Outside the courthouse, the situation was already spiraling online, as leaked fragments of what had been said began circulating faster than official updates could keep up. Social media users were breaking down every claim, building theories, debating timelines, and arguing over which version of events made more sense, while hashtags related to both Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni continued trending worldwide. Fans were deeply divided, some insisting the testimony was being misinterpreted and taken out of context, while others believed it was finally revealing the truth behind months of speculation and silence. One viral comment summed up the chaos perfectly. Every update makes this feel less like a rumor and more like something that was waiting to explode. And just as the tension seemed to settle into a fragile pause, the court hinted that more supporting testimony could be introduced, leaving everyone inside and outside the room with the same unsettling question hanging in the air. If this is what one layer of the story looks like, then how many more layers are still hidden, waiting to completely change everything all over again? The moment that suggestion was made, about additional supporting testimony, the entire courtroom reportedly shifted again, like a pressure point had been hit that nobody could ignore anymore. Blake Lively was seen briefly turning toward her legal team, a quiet exchange happening almost instantly, her expression now more alert than before, as if the case was no longer just unfolding but accelerating beyond control. Justin Baldoni, on the other hand, remained composed, but observers described a noticeable stillness in him that felt less like calm confidence and more like calculated focus, the kind that comes when someone realizes the narrative is about to expand in ways they cannot predict. And that's when things began to escalate outside the courthouse even faster than inside it, because social media had already caught on to the idea that more witnesses could be stepping forward, and that alone was enough to send the internet into complete chaos. Posts started flooding and claiming insiders were confirming additional testimony, even though nothing official had been announced, and within minutes, fan communities fractured into louder, more aggressive sides. One group insisted that Blake Lively was being unfairly pulled into a manufactured drama driven by selective leaks, while another group argued that the pattern of details emerging suggested something deeper was finally being exposed. Hashtags began trending again, but this time the tone had changed, less curiosity, more urgency, as if people were no longer watching a story unfold, but witnessing something irreversible. Inside the courtroom, the legal teams reportedly appeared more reactive now, with sharper exchanges, faster note passing, and longer pauses between statements that felt heavy with implication. At one point, according to observers, a reference was made to inconsistencies between earlier statements and newly presented testimony, and the reaction in the room reportedly became visibly tense, with Blake Lively's expression tightening at the mention, while Justin Baldoni's gaze remained fixed, unreadable, and intensely focused on the proceedings. The judge's involvement also appeared more active in guiding the direction of discussion, signaling a need to keep the testimony structured as emotions and tension began to rise. Meanwhile, outside, the narrative was completely out of control. Commentators, fans, and entertainment pages were all trying to piece together a story that was still actively unfolding, turning fragments into theories and assumptions into trending discussions. Some users claimed this was the moment the case flipped, while others insisted nothing had been proven and the online reaction was spiraling far beyond the facts. But regardless of which side people were on, one thing was becoming undeniable. This was no longer just a courtroom dispute. It had become a public spectacle where perception was moving faster than truth, and every new detail had the power to reshape everything that came before it. And just when it seemed like the court might finally pause to regain control of the situation, a new development was hinted at, one that reportedly involved a previously unmentioned timeline of events, leaving everyone inside and outside the room holding the same thought. If even this much is already being questioned, then what happens when the next layer of the story is finally forced into the open?